You want me to put that on my Tudor?
This One's Wife. The impact on Archie. There will be a number of you listening to me, HG Tudor, who are what are known as ACONs, adult childs of narcissists. That a parental narcissist was involved in your upbringing and it has impacted upon you. Parental narcissists always have a substantial impact upon their children. During their development, they create a risk that the child will become a narcissist themselves as a consequence of passing on the genetic predisposition and creating a lack of control environment within which that child becomes a narcissist as a means of coping with their exposure to the lack of control environment. Even if that does not happen, they may well subject the child to a variety of abusive practices and create an addiction to narcissists as the child becomes an empath. That addiction, by virtue of imprinting, plagues that child's life, making them more susceptible in adult life to being ensnared by narcissists, particularly in the romantic genre. Many individuals who are the adult childs of narcissists will account for how it has impacted upon them and how it continues to impact upon them where they maintain some form of involvement with that narcissist as an adult. That parent has expected the child to parent them, that parent has interfered in their life, in their relationships, in their decisions, that they've continued to abuse them in some shape or form. Archie, if you accept that there are children, is the firstborn of Prince Harry and this one's wife. He is the child of a narcissist, which means that he is subjected to that lack of control environment. I've explained elsewhere what that environment might look like, but essentially it revolves around him being left with other people, emotionally neglected, quite possibly subjected to direct devaluing behaviours. Life will not be easy for him. Although much is made of the joke that he would see a pair of trees as his parents, ultimately it does appear to be the case that they don't spend a huge amount of time with him and that he's left in the care of others. That might go some way to protecting him from a lack of control environment because there are interveners by virtue of a grandparent or possibly, more likely, staff, nannies that look after him. The fact is, the behaviour of his mother will impact severely upon him. It's highly likely that he has not perhaps turned out the way that she has wanted, part of the reason why he remains hidden, and in the circumstances may well find himself to being scapegoated. It remains to be seen how that will all pan out, but it's also been suggested that the race row with the royal family will have a devastating impact on Archie. Daniela Elsa writes in news.com.au, "What do you think is written on Prince Archie of Sussex's lunchbox? When his parents, Prince Harry and this one's wife, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, ordered those sticky name tapes that get slapped on every item shipped daily into preschools by doting parents, did they just go for a plain Archie? Or did they include his title? Is there a Mountbatten Windsor thrown in for good measure? There are identity politics, and then there are royal identity politics. Not a lot gets written about the young prince, but this week Archie has played an accidental starring role in one of the biggest crises, in years' worth of large crises, that is buffeting Buckingham Palace. His grandfather, King Charles, and Aunt Kate, the Princess of Wales, are alleged, according to a new book, to be the previously unspecified members of the royal family who raised what his mother, this one's wife, dubbed concerns and conversations about his skin colour before he was born. Every day this week, the situation has gotten more and more out of royal hand, from the buck in question, Omid Scobie's Bell End game, going from being a caustic nuisance to resuscitating the simmering row over race that has burbled along for years, to, courtesy of the Dutch translation, identifying Charles and Kate as the concern's culprits. At the time of writing, it's all a case of Scobie says versus an implacable palace silence, an approach that normally eager oversharers the Sussexes are following too. For now, let's forget what happens in the next few days and whether, as a Times editorial has postulated, the Duke and Duchess should be stripped of their Sussex titles. Forget, however much gnashing of teeth might be happening behind the doors of Clarence House and Adelaide Cottage this weekend, and forget the clutch of loyal courtiers onto their 6 double espressos and second whiteboard as they try to work out how to respond. You know that phrase that gets thrown around by conservative politicians and pundits, "Won't someone think of the children?" Well, as this imbroglio overtakes the palace and the House of Montecchio, won't someone think of the prince and princess? What little, if any chance there might have been of Archie, especially, but Lily too, forming some sort of real bond or connection with their British family, has this week taken a massive hit. How much harder will it be for Charles to ever really get to know his American grandchildren, now that the youngest prince will one day know that, according to his mother, his grandfather had concerns about his skin colour while he was still in utero? The situation was parlous enough already. Now, of course, pausing there, this one's wife does not care. She has no interest at all in maintaining a bond. Her self-serving narcissism has no due regard for Archie and how this will impact upon him. In order to pursue that subconscious agenda of the prime aims, his familial relationships are to be sacrificed. Thus he has nothing to do with his maternal grandfather or his uncle and auntie on his mother's side. He has nothing to do with his paternal grandfather or his auntie and uncle on his father's side, or cousins. All of them are denied to Archie and Lilibet too, thus preventing him from knowing many members of his family and all of the advantages that come with that. Naturally, this one's wife doesn't care at all about doing that because her narcissism tells her that what she is doing is entirely appropriate, that what she is doing is necessary, that she is protecting her family from the bigoted racists. Instead, of course, her narcissism, as it has done so with Harry, has driven a wedge between her offspring and other members of the family. Her narcissism means that she has no emotional empathy for her children, that their well-being is only a matter of cognitive empathy and facade management, that she truly does not care about what happens to them. We see that as a consequence of the amount of time that she spends away from them, and the fact that she has done this to cause them to be ostracized from their family. There are some individuals who will maintain relationships between their child and their ex's family. I know, for instance, of one individual that consulted with me whereby her ex-husband, a narcissist, had left. He would see their son every couple of weeks, but she nevertheless wanted to ensure that he had contact with his grandparents on her ex-spouse's side of the family. This in part was driven by the fact that her own parents were dead, and therefore he wanted to ensure that he had involvement with grandparents. Notwithstanding the behaviour of their son towards her, about which she had much complaint, she put that to one side for the good of her child, to ensure that that child had a relationship with his grandparents. They lived an hour and a half away, but she would invite them to come and stay at her property, even though they were the parents of the man that had cheated on her. They were appreciative of this, and, notwithstanding the instances of where it was somewhat uncomfortable, given the history of what had gone on, she behaved as an adult and put that to one side for the sake of her child. This one's wife would not behave in such a way as that woman. This one's wife, as a narcissist, doesn't care about what the needs of Archie and Lilibet are, or rather, that their needs become subsumed to her own. And thus, the impact of all of this is to deny Archie meaningful relationships with members of his family. But it's all deemed necessary, of course, by the self-serving interest of this one's wife. November marked 4 years since a baby Archie flew the 10 hours from the UK to Vancouver Island with his parents, where they all shacked up in the first mega mansion in a series of North American mega mansions befitting an unusually flush real housewife that they have called home. Since then, the now 4.5-year-old has spent a grand total of 4 days back in the United Kingdom, which also happens to be the entire amount of time that his sister has spent back in their father's homeland. Consider, Lilibet is a princess of the United Kingdom, but has never even spent a full week on British soil. By all accounts, William and Kate, the Prince and Princess of Wales's 3 young children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, have only met Archie on a small number of occasions, while as far as has been reported, they have never met Lily. For 4 days during the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations last year, the King's 5 grandchildren were all staying approximately 650 metres away from one another on the Windsor estate. And yet, was there a jammy play date arranged? Any sort of transatlantic summit of young cousins, awkwardly negotiated via stilted messages sent via encrypted servers and with the help of aides in multiple time zones? Exactly. While we wait to see what the short and medium-term repercussions of Bell Endgame's naming of Charles and Kate and the Sussex's so far extraordinary silence might be, let's you and I take a look at the longer-term picture. A longer-term picture where it's these kids, and especially Archie and Lily, who will pay a high price. It's impossible to overlook the very human sadness here. These Sussex tots are growing up without knowing either of their grandfathers, one of them having sold out their mother by giving portions of a letter to the Daily Mail and staging paparazzi photos for Dosh, and the other having been ending up on the opposing side of the dynastic bust-up of Makes-It. Right now, it's hard to ever see that changing, and it's hard to see a future where Archie and Lily will have any sort of meaningful relationship with their British royal family. In November, the Times reported that Harry and this one's wife would not decline an invitation to spend time with His Majesty for Christmas, a testing of the waters that was met with an implacable "No way, Jose" from the palace, and the sound of an old Bakelite handset being banged back into its cradle. His Majesty's unwillingness to see Harry and this one's wife is eminently understandable, and of course it's the assertion of control by staying in a position of withdrawal. The King having no interest in helping them incidentally create new Netflix fodder or having to enjoy his double portion of hard sauce across the table from 2 people who have earned tens of millions by telling the world what a plonker he is. But what about the Sussex kids? Archie has never spent the festive period with his grandfather and never gotten to partake in the staunchly Teutonic celebrations that the Windsors favour to this day. We can blame the staunchly Saxon Prince Albert for that one, a man whose greatest achievements include popularising Christmas trees and installing indoor plumbing for Buckingham Palace. My point is, in all of the tempest and the interviews and the tears and the finger-pointing and the checks and the senior palace sources popping up to whisper sweet nothings into the British media's ears, the people Elsa feels really sorry for are the ones high on Octonauts merch and low on ever having met the Archbishop of Canterbury. You do not have to be any sort of vociferous Sussex or Wales fan to see the pathos of this mess of all of their parents and grandparents making. There is also the wider question of what this cousinly estrangement could mean down the track when the current crop of kids hits adulthood. In the UK, we might see George and likely Charlotte and Louis by default dutifully suiting up daily to fly the flag for king and country, the 3 of them by that stage the only working members of the royal family aside from their parents potentially left. The 3 of them. Everything will rest on the 3 of them. Just imagine the pressure and the workloads that were brought to bear here, even to just fulfill the basic requirements of a constitutional monarchy. Meanwhile, over in the United States, having grown up in the shadow of Uncle Sam and the Stars and Stripes and Oprah popping around for kitchen suppers, Archie and Lily will be 2 adults with titles that inextricably tie them to the monarchy, and yet have no practical or emotional connections to the crown. That duality of these inherently opposing identities seems liable to cause no end of headaches down the track. Their otherness, as members of the British royal family brought up on American soil, wholly unique in Hollywood, will ensure a lifetime of endorsement deals and light TV hosting gigs and toothpaste commercials will be shovelled their way. No matter what, their actions, their marriages and their business dealings will still refract back and forth on the firm, a sort of reputational ricochet effect. Maybe we will see Archie and Lily hungrily pursue private lives in the wilds of Montana, or maybe we will see the first bona fide prince end up hosting The Masked Singer. Now, this week, piled on top of this already vertiginous pile of obstacles to Archie and Lily ever knowing their British family, we can add Benel Endgame's revealing of the so-called royal racists. How will it feel for the prince at some stage in the future to know that his mother believes his grandfather and aunt were expressing unconscious bias towards him before he was even born? Pausing there, of course, typically this one's wife doesn't think about that. She doesn't think about the impact upon her son. She doesn't think about the impact upon his relationships. All she cares about is smearing. All she cares about is making herself look like the victim in order to gain that control. All she cares about is making people feel sorry for her so that she receives the fuel that is her lifeblood. The fact is that in relation to this one's wife, she has demonstrated time and time again through her narcissism that she simply does not care about her children. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.